Okay. All right. We'll start with the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. I saw a beautiful posting on Facebook that someone took a picture of. It's a huge, huge sign to the entrance to Tel Aviv, not Jerusalem, the entrance to Tel Aviv, a huge sign that says Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Now you have to know that's not usually the vibe of Tel Aviv. I think not so long ago there was I won't even say, there was all sorts of other things that were being hung and displayed on the sides of buildings, and this was this huge sign. So this person took this picture. It was like, I think, like Mashiach is coming. This is like such a transformation. It is unbelievable. It is truly unbelievable. So let us say our bracha to start our learning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. This week we start the book Sefer of Shemot, names commonly known as Exodus, the Exodus from Egypt. All of the different Sfarim, all of the different books of Torah also have other names that they're known by. And the book of Exodus is known as the book of exile and redemption. Exile and redemption, which makes sense because we are in exile in Egypt and we are going to be redeemed. But the redemption is considered in a way a full redemption because in the book of Exodus, even though the most dramatic part of the book of Exodus is the Exodus, the bulk of the book of Exodus is about the building of the Mishkan. That is where the most column inches appear in the Torah, and it's considered the building of the Mishkan that is the sign of the redemption, because when the Jewish people will come into the land of Israel and they will build the temple, both temples were stood for hundreds and hundreds of years. Go tell your favorite United Nations representative that those buildings stood. The building of the temple and having the place where there is the nexus point between the human and the divine experience, where we can palpably feel Hashem's presence and can demonstrate what that life looks like. That is the definition of redemption. So when the Jewish people build the Mishkan in the desert and they're not yet in the land of Israel, that's still called a mini redemption, which is why the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, is called the book of the exile and the redemption. Otherwise, it would really, you couldn't say that was the name of the whole book. You could say it's the name of the first two parshas at the most, or the first few parshas at the most, while we're doing exile and redemption. And then what would you say about the rest of the book, which is the rest of the, when I say book, the book of Exodus, which is about the building of the Mishkan. That's considered the rest of the redemption. And this book, the book of Shemot, is what we look at in microscopic closeness for insight and wisdom and relevance for us in our lives all the time, and especially today, where we are looking for how do we go through periods of difficulty and oppression and enslavement. And the first example of anti-Semitism, where Pharaoh is afraid of the Jewish people, that we're going to become a fifth column and we're going to destroy and rise up with the enemies of Egypt to destroy the country. And this is like the first time we see this in a, I'll say, in a political arena, where then action, official government action, is taken with a program to demoralize, dehumanize, enslave, and get rid of the Jewish people goes into effect. And so here we have it. So we don't really have to draw the comparisons too much more closely, because it's right in front of our faces of how do we do this. So what I want to share today is primarily comes from a shiur, a class that I heard from Rabbi Avraham Willig, Willig, for those of you who are interested, on Torah Anytime. And I was caught by the title of his class, which is about the incredible Jewish women about what is the role and what is the unique nature of the Jewish women. And he starts off, or he references, I'm going to kind of say what he says, but bring in some other things as well. He references a section of the Talmud, the Gemara in Nida, which says it was in the merit of the righteous Jewish women that the Jewish people deserved and were liberated and redeemed from Egypt. And just as that was the case then, in the future, it will be in the merit of righteous Jewish women that the Jewish people will be redeemed finally and eternally. It doesn't say in the merit of all the tzaddikim, of the righteous people. It doesn't say in the merit of the great rabbis. It doesn't say in the merit of any other kind of category of people, in the merit of the one Jewish leader who's going to emerge. That's going to be it. It's like, no, in the merit of the righteous Jewish women, the Jewish people will be redeemed. So when we know who is that, then look at your screen and you're looking at her. It's like me. It's like in the merit of me. So one of the things that's unique about in the merit of the righteous Jewish women is it doesn't say in the merit of the righteous Jewish woman. So even though we tend to focus, and we are going to focus on Miriam and Yocheved, Moshe's mother and sister, and the roles they played as what it teaches us, what we learned specifically from them. One of the beautiful things is that the Jewish women acted in mass, and the Jewish women have always acted in mass. They have always come together, and as if there was some sort of a magical connection between them, they act and they move forward in almost a simultaneous approach without having to necessarily officially confer. They didn't have, in Egypt, they didn't have a meeting of the Jewish women. There wasn't like a women's league meeting that said, okay, ladies, we're going to all get together and decide what our policy is going to be about how to have hope and how to have emunah and faith and trust in Egypt while we're going through this. There was no meeting. There was a knowing. And this comes from the Jewish woman's bina, this intuitive understanding and this sense of connection. So it's as if the women are all connected. I feel this very much so, and even more so now living in Israel, and even here in Century Village, walking around the different apartment complexes, because we live in the Jewish neighborhood of Century Village. Because there is an Orthodox synagogue that has 1,000 members, and it's conveniently for us, but it's at one end of the complex. And so there is, I think I probably shared this with you when we were looking for a condo, the prices are much higher on for the condos that are very close to the shul. Now, when we lived in Denver, it was a half-hour walk. In Florida in the summer, no one's walking a half hour to shul. If it's more than 6 minutes, like it's not happening. So there is an incredible pressure and concentration of Jewish people in the buildings that are right around the shul. And those prices are all higher. And sometimes you can't even find an apartment that's for sale because it's like this underground market that as soon as somebody knows, God forbid somebody passes away, like after Shiva, this is a joke, but kind of true. It's like, is your apartment for sale? It's like, there's like there are very few and far between, and so people want them. So it's very nice walking around on Friday night and seeing the condos that are lit up, like beyond the dinner time to know, like, okay, it's Shabbos and those apartments are all lit up. But when we light candles for the holidays and Shabbos, and we're lighting on time, and we know, and we can picture and feel other Jewish women around the world, almost in a wave of light, are simultaneously lighting candles and bringing in Shabbos. It's like, what other things do you do where you know that you are in sync with thousands and millions of people at the same time, and there's a wave of light? Because I know there are some women who are ready for Shabbos early, but not usually. So that I know that at 5:22, whatever it is in Florida, I know that the women in Florida are lighting candles, and that I'm part of something and connecting to something that's beyond my private home. So the Jewish women have this sense of being connected to all the other Jewish women, and together they all acted the same way, not like robots, but with their own individual approach, but all on the same wavelength. So when people erroneously say, oh, the Torah doesn't tell us anything about the women, we don't know anything about the women, we just know about the men. It's like, well, the men stand out because they were individuals who rose to the occasion. The women were all rose to the occasion. Like, I'm sorry, I can't list the names of 3 million, 1 million women. So it's like the Jewish women as a group, the righteous Jewish women, it was in their merit that the Jewish people merited and were redeemed, and in the future, and God willing, it's the future now, and that we are seeing the signs of that. I want to share something before we kind of kick off about the Jewish women. My combination of my WhatsApp somehow not really exactly working with my laptop and my lack of technology skill, but I want to play for you, and I'm going to hold it up and hope you can at least hear well, but you can see it's a video of a woman. It's a few minutes, it's like 5 minutes, of a woman here in Israel. I say here because we're all here. It's speaking, whose husband was killed as a soldier, but she speaks in such an inspiring way, and she is inspiring and articulate, but she represents a general approach that women and the Jewish people have, and the women are inspiring others. In almost every case, I mean, there's not every single case, but in almost every case, when people are being killed in Gaza or up north, it's the mothers who are getting the press and who are speaking out in such an articulate way. It's like when the 3 boys were kidnapped, and before we knew what happened to them, it was the mothers who were the ones who were the spokespeople, who were giving the Jewish people such courage and such strength and such inspiration. It's like, where does this come from? It's like, it came from those Jewish women. So I'm going to play this and hold it up, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Okay. And if not, I can answer questions afterwards.
So my name is Hadass Lowenstern, and we will be talking about my righteous husband, Elisha. First of all, Elisha, he was the love of my life. We spent 13 beautiful years together. We have 6 children. My oldest is 12 and a half. He will have his bar mitzvah a week before Rosh Hashanah. And my youngest is a 10 months old baby, a baby girl. And we were so happy together. We had a wonderful life, and we did many things together. My husband was a big Talmid Chacham. Actually, he did so many things in his life. I can say a few. He translated the Gemara Steinsaltz into English, and he used to tutor bar mitzvah, secular bar mitzvah boys here in Israel for their bar mitzvahs. And he would study Rambam Yomi, the daily Rambam, and he was in charge of our schedule here and in our shul. And he used to work out. He would get up 4 times a week. He would get up before Vatikin to run. He had time for everything that was important, which was a very rare thing that I saw in him. He did not waste time. He did not waste time at all. He would do sit-ups. So he had this app that you can do, let's say, 50 sit-ups, and then you have a minute, you have like a stopwatch. You have a minute to rest between sets. So within this minute, he would get up. He had an open Mishnayot. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. And then when the app called him back, he would go back, do the squats or whatever, the push-ups or whatever. And then he had another minute. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. On the 7th of October, when you all know what happened here in Israel, and we told each other, okay, this is wartime, and you have to go. We have to be there. So he left the house right after Simchat Torah. He left the house and he went to fight. They were there for about a week, maybe 10 days. I don't know, because we couldn't talk ever since he left the house, like 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks before he died, he called me twice. We had about a minute to talk. He told me that he is killing a lot of bad guys, that he's fighting B'Shem Hashem, that he is very happy to have the privilege to defend Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. He was very, very happy. And we were both very confident because this is not a private story. This is not about Hadass Lowenstern or about Elisha Lowenstern. This is about the Jewish nation, and this is about our enemies trying to kill us throughout history. My husband was the first tank to go into the south part of the Gaza Strip. There were soldiers who got into this problem there and they got injured. So Elisha tried to go and rescue them with his tank, and they shot at him and they hurt him. Talking about his death is so shuli in my eyes because he only died once, but he lived every day. So telling you how my husband died, he died. Hashem decided that my husband will die. That's Hashem's decision. I can't change it. But I am alive, and my 6 kids are alive. And this is our plan. We plan on living such a wonderful life that the bad guys will never be zoche to live. We will live here in Eretz Yisrael, and we will study Torah, and we will lekayem mitzvot, and we will be a happy Jewish family. And this is the true victory in my eyes. In our watches, there is a time difference. Right here in Israel, the time is whatever, and you have time differences with us. But in our hearts, there are no time differences, and we love you so much, and we feel you. We feel you davening for us. We feel you praying for us. We feel you not speaking Lashon Hara for us, and we feel you having the best time with your kids for us, and we feel you jogging for us. Whatever you do there, far away, we feel it right here in Israel. And Bezrat Hashem, we will all be together when Mashiach comes. We will all be together here in Yerushalayim, and I will give all of you such a huge hug, like the hugest hug ever.
It's really unbelievable what a gibora. I heard it before, and it made me cry. I haven't been able to cry. Everything is inside of me. And she, with her message in the end to us, because many people tell me, why are you praying? What does it have to do with or what does it have to do, Lashon Hara, with saving a soldier? And she's saying, it counts, we feel it. And then you feel that it's not in vain. And that
everybody, yes, you're exactly right, Gabi. And if somebody said, you know what, this is Miriam, who just was reincarnated, and she just came back as this woman, and be like, yes, that was her. So if you could just like wind back the clock, and we would see that these are the Jewish women. Now, I never heard of her or her husband beforehand. Before this happened, these were all just ordinary Jewish women, ordinary people. And, people sometimes think like, oh, talking about Mashiach, people live like in this like la la land. If you have 6 children, you're not living in la la land. You have day-to-day responsibilities, challenges, difficulties, expenditure of energy, the psychic, the emotional, the financial, the incredible burden of that is not la la land. Having a focus on Mashiach and redemption is probably the bravest, strongest, most amazing perspective to live one's life like that. She has every reason to completely just fall apart. And I mentioned last week, I think pretty sure, that there was an event for women who are all expecting babies whose husbands were all killed in battle. They had an event for them, to just give them chizuk, to give them energy and strength and bring together. It's like all these people have every reason to be just spending every day, all day in therapy, and just say like, I can't. And all these women are like, I can and I will, and the drawing on incredible strength. So where do these people come from? It's like they come from this week's parsha. When I say we like look at it, like who were these women? So when we already know it was like all the Jewish women. And what was it? So we have to understand, it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful how the rabbi spoke. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure because I'm getting some feedback here.
Helen, is there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Unmute yourself. I had just muted everything.
Yeah. Is there any way you can send us that video and we can send it to other people? Because it's a beautiful, I mean, it's incredible.
It's beautiful. I can only send it on WhatsApp. So if you have WhatsApp, I can send it to you. It's on, I think I put it on my Yisrael Chai, but I can only send it. I can't get it onto Facebook or email, but I can do it on WhatsApp. So
okay.
happy to send that.
Yeah,
it's really, really, really something. Okay, so what's very interesting is what Rabbi Willig did is he said, let's really rewind the clock and talk about the creation of woman from the very beginning of time, going back to Bereshit, going back to Genesis, and see, because we read it again like a fairy tale, and we don't realize that if it's in the Torah, it's meant to instruct us, to give us information, insight, and wisdom and direction for our lives. Otherwise, I don't really need to know about it. So let's just go back to Genesis for a moment. You can keep, I guess we haven't talked about any pages yet, so don't have to keep a page yet. But let's go back to Genesis, and we're going to go back to page 13 in the Chumash, which is chapter 2, verse 18. Page 13. On page 13, which is verse 18 of chapter 2, they're talking about the creation of, wait, that's not right. Hold on 1 second, I said that wrong. Page 13, 2:18. Yes. Yes, it is. Page 13, verse 18. This is a part of creation where Hashem decides to create a woman, a helper. Hashem God said, it is not good that man be alone. I will make him a helper corresponding to him. And that word is an ezer kenegdo. An ezer kenegdo means a helper that's keneged. And the word neged means opposite, but it also means opposing. Somebody who is neged something is somebody who's always opposing.
Again.
Okay, so it means, right, it means against, but it also means corresponding. So the commentary on that is that the role of the woman to Adam was to be somebody who matched up with him, but who would also oppose him if he was on the wrong track. And that was her nature, was to be able to see how he was going in the wrong direction and if he needed to be corrected. So tell the men in your life, listen, this is why I was created, was to give you this information. So, blame God, that's who I am. Okay, so this Ezer Kenegdo, but it's supposed to be not just to be neged, it's supposed to be helpful, okay? To be helpful. So this being a helpful opponent is something that is different than just being an opponent. If you're just an opponent, then you're just negative, and nobody needs that. When you are helpful opponent, you have wisdom and insight and advice on how to go in a better direction. Says this was implanted in the woman. Now, when this goes off in the negative direction, hear the word negative and how it sounds like neged, which means against, like neged, negativity. So to do that, it says this is where we get the idea of the wrong idea of the nagging Jewish woman. You know, that's like a stereotype, the nagging Jewish woman. She's such a nagging. It's like, what does that mean? It means that she has advice, she just hasn't quite mastered how to deliver it in a way that's the most helpful. But she does have a perspective. So the Jewish woman has that. We've seen it as individuals. We saw Sarah had her advice against her husband to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. We had Rivka, who was against her husband and made sure that Yaakov got the blessing and not Esau. We're going to see in this week's parsha of Shemot that when we know that because of the oppression and the decree to kill all the Jewish baby boys when they were born, what happened is that Amram, Moshe's to-be father, said, and he was the leader of the men. What did the men say when there was that decree against the Jewish baby boys? Life's not worth living. We're going to divorce our wives and not bring any children into the world. Why would you bring children into the world if the boys are going to be killed and thrown into the river? So the men all divorced their wives. No babies were being born. And who comes up? Neged, her father, Miriam, as a child. Some say 8, some say 5 years old, telling her father Amram, you are worse than Pharaoh. Pharaoh's decree is just against the men, the boys. Yours, by not having any children, is against the boys and the girls. And why are you listening to Pharaoh? You should be a Yirei Shamayim. You should fear God. Pharaoh is a person. He's going to come and go. God told us, Pur'u Urvu, be fruitful and multiply. We need to build the Jewish people who are going to be redeemed. And don't worry about what Pharaoh's doing. Now, you could say that you are an illogical little girl, go to your room or go play with your dolls. But what does Amram do? He listens. He listens to his little daughter, who is neged him, because she is an ezer kenegdo. She is helpful against and opposite him. He comes back together with Yocheved, all of the different men throughout the Jewish community all come back together with their wives. They all come back and they start building the Jewish people, which is why there were so many by the time they left, which, remember, this was a long, long time later. We all want things to happen so soon. We've shared before, as I said, a friend of mine's son in Israel, when the war started, on the first day, when he said, you know how we have the 6-day war? This is probably going to be the 3-day war. It's like, it's not the 3-day war. It's not the 3-day war. Miriam, if she was, let's say she was 8, let's just round it up to say she was 10 when this all happened. How much later in her life was it before the redemption actually happened? It's like, it was a really long time. Moshe himself was 80 years old when he comes back to Egypt to lead the Jewish people out. God willing, we don't have to wait 80 years. But what we are saying is a redemption mentality is not a quick fix mentality. It's not that we hope that it's around the corner. We hope that it's around the corner. And we act accordingly, and we do what we can to prepare for that eventuality, which is have the children, bring in more babies, and create the people that God will redeem. We don't know what the time frame is, but we're living that with front and center in our minds, regardless of how long it takes. That's what emunah is. Emunah, and having faith and trust, means to act on it, act on a future vision in the present moment decision that you have in front of you. I just saw, I think someone may have seen the statistics. Since the war started, 30,000 babies born. That's a lot of babies.
Wow.
Okay, a lot of babies. And we know in the Torah, it says the more the Egyptians oppressed the Jewish people, the more multiple births they had.
Just in Israel?
Just in Israel. Yep.
What's the normal amount, though? What do they usually have?
I don't know, but it was worth mentioning that it was that. And even if it was the normal amount, most people in crisis mode stop having children. It's kind of first of all, it's kind of a whatever in the romance department is like, no, I'm not in the mood, number one. And number two is like, why bother? There's an existential threat to the existence of the Jewish people. I don't think this is a good time. I think I've shared before that when our daughter Audrey was born, I went to a infant, I don't know, it was like exercise, massage class, I don't remember what it was, at Rose Medical Center, and walking in with a woman And she said, I'm not sure if this was a mistake. And I said, what, signing up for this class? And she said, no, having a baby. And I'm like, oh. I said, why would you say that? She said, well, just because the way the world is, I'm not sure it's like really worth bringing a child in. I'm like, this is not a Jewish approach. I said, well, you know what? I'm just hoping that my daughter will be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And the Jewish view is, there's a crisis, more hands on deck. We need more children. Just like what people did in the DP camps. They got married and they started having children. How many people do you meet who were born in a DP camp? Jews were born, yeah, okay. People were like, that's not normal in other cultures. The other people are like, no, we're not doing this. This is a time of uncertainty. This is negative. This is difficult. Jews are like, okay, then let's move forward. So this brings us this life force. This life force is like, what does this refer to? It says, this is when woman is created. So we have one definition, which is she's the Ezer Kenegdo. She is the person who has the opposing belief and is able to see a perspective that I'm going to call the husband or the male, and I'm going to call the male perspective the normal rational approach. It's not stupid when there's a decree of death against baby boys to say, I don't think we should be having children. That's not like a dumb thing to say. That is a pretty rational thing to say. It's the super rational, redemption-minded, future-oriented, we need to do something perspective of Miriam Yocheved to go in a different direction, the opposite direction. They say fewer Jews, we say more Jews. Aliyah numbers are up 410% since the war started. It's like, who does this? Most people, if there's a war zone, they flee. The Jewish people come. It's like, you don't know, someone did a very funny thing saying, thank you, Hamas. You brought the Jewish people together. You brought them back to the land of Israel. We're more united than we've ever been before. Thank you. We're not really doing so great by ourselves, but you may manage to push us into this corner and do this. So we have this approach, this counter approach. This is the Ezer Kenegdo, and this is who the Jewish women are. The second definition of what a Jewish woman is goes to what a woman is. And let's turn to that. That's on page 19 in Genesis. So 19 in Genesis is also where Adam names Chava. Names the woman. Now I just
What
gave
chapter?
That is chapter 3, verse 20. Chapter 3, verse 20. It's page 19 in the Chumash, and it says, the man called his wife, and we always know it as Eve, because she had become the mother of all the living. Now, the Hebrew is, for verse 20, verse Chaf, is it says, Vayikra Adam Shem Ishto Chava, Ki Chayta Aim Kol Chai. The mother of Kol Chai is all that is alive. It doesn't mean it's not life, it's like all that is alive. That's what the name means. So what is that, like Aim Kol Chai? And Aim Kol Chai, the woman is called the life force. She is the source of life. Now, you could say at just the most biological level, yes, she's the one who gives birth. Every one of us sitting here was given birth to by a mother. So yes, by definition, she is a life force. But it's more than that. She is a physical life giver because she is a life giver. And to give someone life, to give someone chiyus, to give someone liveliness, is to enliven them. This can be spiritually, emotionally, psychically, physically. Someone is like, oh, it was so life-giving. Something that enables to have life put back into us, that is the other role, is that the women are the sustainers and the ones who bring people to life. The Jewish women in Egypt did that. It says the men, they were, now you know, it's like God wrote this, men wouldn't write this about themselves. It says the men were so depressed. They were so out of it. They were so demoralized. They were so despondent. It's like they just were just kind of like giving up. They had really just kind of given up. And what did all the women do? All of the women, it says they were life givers. What did they do? It said they did practical things, spiritual things, as they went out into the fields. Now, mind you, this was after the women were doing their own work all day long, like a woman's work is never done. She would go out to the fields, bring hot water, which was a big thing to be able to bring hot water. First of all, you have to heat the water and carry it out there. Food. We know they brought the mirrors and all the things. They would get their husbands to be interested, a little romantic. I love you. You're so handsome. Let's be together. They gave their husbands life. They gave them reason to go on living, because they were, not only was there a decree of death, of actual physical murder of the Jewish baby boys. It's like you can be alive and dead also. You can be like just have your life force sucked out of you. It says the men had their life force sucked out of them, and the women re-enlivened them. That this is what it means to be an aim kol chai, to be a life giver, a life sustainer. And so her name was Chava. So it says that's related to the word like chaya, and it means someone who is alive. In order to be alive, like what we just saw that video of, she is an aim kol chai. Not only is she a physical mother of 6 children, but I so much wanted you just not to hear it, but to see her face. This is pretty shortly after her husband's been killed. It's like, she is alive. And I'm like, I feel, such pain and sadness for her children growing up without their father. It's so horrible to think about. And on the other hand, thank God those children have her as a mother. And someone like that is a life force that enlivens people who are around them. People have been saying that about Shiva houses that they've gone to, that they go to give consolation, and they themselves are consoled by the life force that is in the people. Like the Shiva call we made when we first got there right after the war of the family whose son was killed on October 7th. When we went, she's a teacher. She does like a junior like a kids program on Shabbos mornings. And during her Shiva, usually you don't do this, during her Shiva, she went to the synagogue and she sent out a text to the women, to the mothers before Shabbos, saying, we're going to have our get together. We're going to sing Shabbos songs. We're going to be happy. And I don't want any tears or sad faces in my room, in my classroom. And she came in and she was beaming. Now, she's not like on drugs. She was beaming and joyful. And she's like, it's Shabbos. Don't mourn on Shabbos. And the kids were singing and hugging her. And of course, all the mothers were crying because they couldn't believe that she could do this. And when we went to make the Shiva call, she's like, oh, you're so wonderful for coming, and welcome to Israel. And it's amazing. And like, I'm coming here to tell you I'm so sad about your son. And she's welcoming us. So this is not just like one person who's doing this in the whole country. This is like a lot of people are drawing on this life force that has been infused and is an expression of the Jewish woman. These mothers, it says the mother, and so we're using mother meaning woman. It doesn't mean you have to be a physical mother, doesn't mean you have to be married, doesn't mean anything. You are called a mother by the fact that if you are a Jewish woman, you are a mother. Because we mother the world. We mother the Jewish people. We mother humanity. But let's talk about specifically 2 people, which are Miriam and Yocheved. Who were they, in addition to who we know, Moshe's mother, Moshe's sister? In the book of Bereshit, we learned about our matriarchs who emerged from their families, and they grew up in really bad families, and they were able to be like self-made women. that they were righteous, they were honest, they were beautiful, they were lovely, righteous women. They were our matriarchs, our mothers. However, there's also something to be said about the environment that people grow up in that makes them into who they are. Because most of the time, people are like how their families were that they grew up in. When our daughter was a camp counselor at Camp Mosheva, they had parents visiting day. So the parents would come. And she said, almost without exception, she knew who the parents were of the kids. She could match them up because the way the kids acted was exactly how the parents acted. The way they talked, the way they treated. The ones who were generous campers came from families that were generous. You know, in those days, which I didn't even know, like the parents tipped the counselors. The ones who were always sharing, the kids who were always sharing the things, their parents were the ones who brought the treats for the whole bunk on the whatever. It's like, yep, as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So you could just kind of tell. So the question is, if we look at Moshe, Moshe as a leader of the Jewish people, it's like, who made him? How did he come to be the person he was? And our sages say, from his mother and his sister, his family. It's like, what was his family? What were they known for? It says, take a look at them. And that's how we know, what do we need to do to cultivate our own Jewish womanhood that makes us into the people who don't necessarily give physical birth to the Redeemer. Like, I'm not giving birth to Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not physically giving birth to anybody at this point in my life. But to give birth to redemption, it's the same thing. How do we give birth to redemption? What does it take? And what are the women known for? So let's go back to the Shemot, and we're going to go back to Miriam and Yocheved to see what their qualities were. So specifically, it says that they were, hold on a second, we're going to go to their work as page 295, which is Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. Chapter 1, verse 15 of Exodus, page 295, for those of us in the Chumash. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of the first was Shifra and the name of the second was Puah, and he said, when you deliver the Hebrew women and you seat them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you're to kill him, and if it is a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt spoke to them, and they caused the boys to live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing that you have caused the boys to live? The midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are unlike the Egyptian women, for they are experts. Before the midwife comes to them, they have given birth. God benefited the midwives, and the people increased and became very strong. And it was because the midwives feared God that he made them houses. We're going to dissect this and find out, what is it, these women that we're being told here in this story, what do we know about them? What are the keys, 3 keys for us to zero in on? Number 1, being a midwife. Is anybody here a midwife? Is anybody a midwife? Okay. Being a midwife, says, what kind of a job is that? It says, like any kind of a caregiver, health provider, very challenging, difficult, et cetera. It says, but there's something unique about a midwife who stays with her, I'll say her patient, stays with her through the whole process of giving birth. Now, this was in the days when they weren't have hospitals and they have limited coverage or things like that. It's like you stayed with your mother and baby. It says, is an incredible act of chesed, of kindness. Why? Because you're with somebody in a very vulnerable, exciting, possibly dangerous, difficult, painful, happy, needy, embarrassing, every kind of situation that a woman could be in when she's giving birth. The midwife is there to be specifically tuned into what that woman needs. Not like, I had 10 women yesterday, what they needed was this, so this is what you're getting. It says, what's the definition of chesed, of kindness? Is when it matches exactly what the person needs, which requires you to really be present to who they are, not who everybody else is. It says this kind of chesed, this kind of kindness and focus on the individual to help them through and to be there with them, says there's nothing like that. So while we have seen for our patriarchs that what was the job description that like most qualified them to be leaders of the Jewish people was to be a shepherd. Okay, a shepherd, that was for a man, that was the job that instilled the most chesed in them. But for a woman, it was being a midwife. It says, but what does it mean to be a midwife? It's like you can midwife somebody. You and I could help midwife somebody who's going through any kind of a challenge. I'm here for you. What do you need? What's the best thing for you? What's your situation? How can I help you? And to be there and stick with them. It says, this quality is called midwifing. This is midwifing. This act of kindness, this is this kind of chesed. This is going to be a quality of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe as a person, but it's also required for redemption. It's required for the Jewish people to cultivate, heighten, enhance this. So again, what we're seeing is during this war is like what people are thinking of to do to help people in very specific ways that is focused on exactly what their needs are is just unbelievable. The second thing that we know about these women is it says is that they had yirat shamayim. They had awe of heaven. How do we know that they had awe of heaven? It says it twice. It says it in verse 17, but the midwives feared God, had yirat shamayim, and they did not do as the king of Egypt spoke to them, and they caused the boys to live. What does yirat shamayim mean? It comes from the word lirot, to see. I see God is the one I report to. And that wasn't, again, just like a nice, oh, I'm just God-fearing. I just see God. It's like, no, these were people who were, these midwives were defying Pharaoh. This is a capital offense that they were willing to risk their lives to defy Pharaoh, to not carry out his orders because they report to God. I report to the king, the creator of the world, the master of the world. I do not report to Pharaoh. And again, at the end, it says in verse 20, God benefited the midwives and the people increased and became very strong. And it was because the midwives feared God that they had that, because Yaru, Vayhi ki Yaru hamiladot et ha'elokim, that they feared God, that he made them houses. Interestingly, it says the people increased and became very strong. Not just that the babies were born, but the spiritual strength of the midwives and of the mothers made the babies strong. Because again, how should those babies have been, maybe? You're being oppressed, you're being enslaved, there are decrees of death. You could have had like some failure to thrive, just like barely hanging in there kind of children. But these were not barely hanging in there kind of children. These were children who were fit, healthy, robust, spiritually and physically and emotionally strong. How did they get that way? It was invested in them from their mothers and their midwives, went into those children. So the women created those children, including the ones they didn't physically give birth to. To be able to see Hashem, says, what does this mean? Says, again, thinking about today in our time, there's so many pressures on the Jewish people and on Israel. The United States, the United Nations, Europe, the bliss, that. There's so much pressure. Who should we really be focused on? We need to focus on what God wants from us, period. You know, that's what we need to do. It's not so easy to have that perspective. Doing the right thing and the right way for the right reason, this is what we need to do. These midwives were able to do that, and that is what created that kind of a force in them, and that kind of tenacity in them was transferred to the children that were born and created the Jewish people. There are many sages who are saying that our generation is the reincarnation of that generation, that we are on the verge of the final redemption. And so there is a reincarnation of that generation of people, and that we are them, so that we have that strength. And again, we're seeing that. It's like we're seeing people do things that are just unbelievably strong, brave, courageous, and completely illogical, of people running to come to help in situations where other people would be running away as fast as possible. It's like, this is incredible. Yirat Shamayim, having an awe of heaven. So we have the outstanding chesed, Yirat Shamayim, and then the third is that they had emunah, that they had a belief in Hashem is going to redeem us, and that Hashem saw that. Verse 20, God benefited the midwives, and the people increased and became very strong. And it was because the midwives feared God that he made them houses, batim, made them houses. This is what kind of a house? Like they got a mansion. You're such a great midwife, I'm going to make you a house. It says bayit, a house, means the house of kingship, and the house of the spiritual, of the kahuna, of the priesthood, came from Miriam and Yocheved, from their side of the family. So it's the Levites, all of those people came from Miriam and Yocheved. So the strength to be able to build that. When you are living, and we know the story, they weren't having a Seder there. They didn't have like, oh, let's have a Seder. They didn't know how it was going to turn out. But the question is, did they not know how it was going to turn out? Or did they know how it was going to turn out? It's like, they did know how it was going to turn out. Because we jump ahead, not to the parsha of Bishalach, but the women, what did they have when they were led by Miriam? Is they had their tambourines. They packed their tambourines. Now, when you're leaving, there's only so much you can carry with you. We know they didn't even have time to bake their matzah, right? They didn't have time to bake their bread. So they were in a hurry. What do you take with you if you're in a hurry and you don't have too much ability to take too much? You say, I think I'll leave my tambourine. Why do I even have a tambourine, number one? And why am I sure to take it? The tambourines were used for like prophetic, for an ecstatic experience. The women had, they were ready to dance and they were ready to celebrate before they knew they had anything to celebrate. Why? Because they knew they were going to have something to celebrate. They didn't know when. It wasn't a question of if, it was only a question of when. Having that perspective is like the woman in the video. We're going to be a happy Jewish family. We don't know how this is, we don't know when it's going to end, but I know how I'm going to live in the meantime. And in the meantime, I'm celebrating. We have to celebrate as we go through the challenge. It's very challenging to do that because you think like, oh, maybe just wait. When it's all over, then like, wait. But they celebrated, they were ready to do it as they were going through. We're going to be a happy Jewish family. She didn't say, when this war is over, we'll be a happy Jewish family. When is she going to be a happy Jewish family? Right now. Right now. And the messages from the soldiers are, don't be depressed. We're not here in Gaza fighting for you to be not in Gaza being depressed. Daven for us. Don't speak Lashon Hara. Give tzedakah. Do mitzvahs. Upgrade your Jewish life. Upgrade your everything. Do everything you can to make you the best you can be. Jewishly as a person in every way possible. That's how you will help us. So my new approach, I'm trying, it's not so easy, is to have limited time when I sit and cry. And just kind of cry over, because, and I can't even like let myself cry fully because I wouldn't stop. Let myself cry over whoever has been killed today, and thinking about the hostages, and just the little baby, his first birthday is today. He's now 1. He went into captivity. What is that? What is that? It's like, it can't even think of that. But if I don't stop thinking about that, then I can't live my life either. And they don't want us to do that. So Jewish people have a hard time. Actually, it's kind of natural, I think, probably, is we feel guilty for being happy. It's like, how can I be happy and enjoy myself when other people are suffering? Not just other random people, my friend, my family. How can I be happy? And they're saying, you need to be happy because that's what we're fighting for. They win if we're depressed. They win if we stop living the life that we're fighting to have. The more we live our joyful Jewish life, the more we win. You're actually helping us win. You're giving us chiyus. You are giving us life, your life force. Like she said, we feel you. Whatever you're doing, how you're living your life is infusing the entire corporate Jewish body, which is one, not two, which is one. It's like blowing air into the balloon. Our life force is going into the collective whole. When we are depressed, it sucks. When we say life sucking, it sucks it out of us. So we have to limited. The rabbi who was the founder of I always forget the name of the hospital in Israel. His wife and 11 children were murdered by the Nazis. Do you know, Etta, you know the name?
Laniado? Laniado?
Rosenberger Rebbe.
Yes, the Klosenberger Rebbe. Yes, Laniado.
Laniado?
The Laniado. Yes, thank you, Gabi. Exactly. People say, and he walks around happy, or he walked around happy. Said, how can you even function? How can you even function? How did you found a hospital? Why didn't you just completely fall apart? Says allows himself a half hour a day to be sad. And then the rest of the day, he's moving forward. He's moving forward. He's moving forward in life. We think, and it's wrong thinking. We think that it's a sign of sensitivity, of awareness, of compassion to walk around depressed. It's not. It takes much more sensitivity, compassion, and awareness to keep it focused in a particular time and place, and then move forward with the life that we have. As the woman said, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting her first name. I'm alive and my children are alive. We're moving forward. Now, if she can move forward, certainly we can.
And how she said that he died once, but he lived every day.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Right. He died once, but he was very much alive. Can you imagine that? Taking your minute in between. First of all, I can't imagine 50 push-ups. That was the only test I cheated on growing up in school, was the president's physical fitness, as if the president of the United States was going to come and see how physically fit I was to serve as a citizen of this country, of the United States. It's the only test I ever cheated on. I'm like, just tell them I did the whatever, 25 sit-ups. But can you imagine you're doing 50 sit-ups and then you take a break for 1 minute and you have a Sefer open to learn Mishnayos? I'm like, who does that? Somebody who is alive. So think about it, about some things like, where am I in these two places of being an Ezer Kenegdo, of doing something that doesn't seem rational? I think honestly, just being Jewish is like the most irrational thing. people from Denver are coming. People from around the world are coming to Israel to come pick crops, and they're going down into the south. And like there were rockets on New Year's Eve. That's how Hamas celebrated New Year's Eve, was to launch rockets.
Exactly.
Friends were in the bomb shelters. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you would say, I think I'm going to go to Israel with a big grin on my face. I'm going to go to Israel and I'm going to help pick crops and help people. It's like, are you crazy? It's like, Jewish crazy is the person who is an Ezer Kenegdo. I'm doing something that's pretty opposite what you would normally think would be a rational, sane, reasonable thing to do. Do you know people who were not Jewish who asked us when we made Aliyah, I was like, aren't you scared to go live in a war zone? And we're like, no. It's like, and I'm a very nervous person. Like I wouldn't even take the trash out in Denver to our back alley at night by myself. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, no, I'm fine. So we are a neged people. We are doing opposite of what normal rational people would do, because we're answering really to a higher power, which is we're answering to what God wants from us and the mission of the Jewish people. So we are the people who are opposite. The Jewish women are opposite. So think about how you can go and be opposite. And I don't mean to be, for no reason, just oppositional, but what's opposite about what we should be doing, and make sure that we don't get swept away with just kind of like the general flow of things and like, no, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to help. I'm going to do whatever. And to be an aim kol chai, a life force, to give life, to reach out to people who are struggling. So if you don't mind, just two things I wanted to share with you. You'll appreciate this. I shared this already with some of you. But there's a Shabbos afternoon women's learning here in Century Village. And so there are two women who give the class. There's two classes kind of back to back. And one of the women is Israeli. And we were talking last week or the week before. And I was talking about like that's it's so important to get the positive things that are going on and things that are inspiring, so they just don't like drown in sadness and frustration and grief. So she said, like, maybe next week you can share like some stories that would be, helpful. And I'm like, sure. So this past Shabbos, after she finished, she said, this is Ellen, she's new. And she just came from Israel. It came like as if I came from the front line. She just came from Israel and she has some stories to share with us. So I introduced her like how I would share with you, say like I have, whatever, it's been horrifying, but also so uplifting, and 3 stories. And so I shared the things about amazing things that were going on. So this one woman afterwards said, thank you so much. She said, because I'm just so depressed. And she said, I just like having trouble sleeping, and it's just so hard. And thank you for sharing those stories. She said, I have to ask you, are you a teacher? And I said, yeah. I said, how did you know? She said, oh, I could just tell like the way you like introduced like your 3 stories and stuff. So I thought she must be a teacher. I'm like, yes, thank you. So anyway, I just thought that was funny. It's also very nice. There's a man who lives in our building. He's originally from Israel, and he hasn't been there in a long, long time. But he does glass work, and he gave us a gift of a mezuzah for our front door as a welcome to the building, which was so sweet. And then we also bought another one from him. But he told us, which we didn't know, is that he was injured in the 6-day war. And so he was in rehab in Petach Tikva, not Petach Tikva, Kfar Saba, in Israel. And since he was injured, the money that he makes from his selling of his mezuzahs, the money all goes to the soldier rehab center in Israel, which we didn't know. So he's been supporting them for all of these years. Not supporting them. He's been giving money to them all of these years. So it's just very special. So he came over because then we were afraid we were going to like break our mezuzah with he goes, do you have a small hammer? I'm like, we have a big hammer. He goes, you're not going to use a big hammer on a glass mezuzah. So he said, I'll come over and put it up for you. So he came over and put it up. So it's just very, very sweet. And to just have an automatic connection with somebody who we just met. So he gave us that gift. So this is the Jewish people, the Jewish women, is that we were specifically created and given the emotional, mental, psychic, and spiritual makeup to be an Ezer Kenegdo, to be a helper opposite, opposing, and an Ein Kol Chai, a life force, one that brings life into people who have had the life sucked out of them. May we be blessed to truly be the generation of the righteous Jewish women who are the cause and the ones who merit being able to be the ones who are responsible for and to enjoy the pleasure of the ultimate redemption, which we so sorely and are in need of and want and will be ready to celebrate. And get ready to play your tambourine.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank
And thank
you.
you so much for joining.
Yasher Koach. Ellen, you said like 5 adjectives specifically given to us, spiritual, and then you said 4
How's
more.
everything? Spiritual, emotional, physical. We were made. Hashem doesn't say that we are something without giving us the tools to do it.
Right.
Just because we have the tools, though, doesn't mean that it's automatic. We still have to, we still have to work on it. So like this, this glass artist, he said, it's taken him a lifetime to develop the talent and the ability he has. So God has gifted us with the qualities, has given us a mission and a way of being, but we have to cultivate any talent that a person has. It's not just an automatic thing that it just pours out. And especially when we live in an environment that does not value who we are or what we do, we have to work even more so. Being connected with other Jewish women is a big help because it's kind of like a time to make those connections stronger so that we realize like, okay, I'm like part of all you. We're all part of this together. We're all kind of on the same page. Oh, I know one last thing I was going to tell you. We went to hear Motzei Shabbos, after Shabbos was over, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau. He's the former chief rabbi of Israel, quite elderly. He was a child survivor of Buchenwald, and he was in Florida last Shabbos for a Shabbaton. And he spoke after Shabbos to a huge crowd. And, just hearing him about, of all the designs that all the people have had against the Jewish people and how devastating it is to be a survivor of the Holocaust and see what had happened in Israel. Like, that he never thought that Israel was the place where you can go, where they weren't going to do to you what the Nazis did. It's like, not so. So it's just, but he was very inspiring. He said, we are the chosen people. God has chosen us. And I heard a beautiful explanation that says, I'm so grateful to be Jewish, even in these difficult times, because I know that I'm not like them. I know that I have clarity. I know that I have a moral compass. I know that I have direction. I know that I have a way of living in this world that is clear, true, good, and correct. And Baruch Hashem, and thank you for that. So it was very inspiring to be able to hear him. I admire that he made the flight because that's just not easy. He's early. But it was really inspiring to hear him. As soon as he walked in the room, everyone was schmoozing. As soon as he walked in, absolute silence, and everyone stood up for him. It was just so beautiful.
I went to a wedding that he officiated a long time ago in Netanya.
He's amazing, really beautiful. All right, ladies, have a very inspiring Sefer Parsha Shmot. We're on to redemption. We're ready. We can do it. We've got this.
Toda Rava. You really uplifted us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for uplifting me.
Yeah, my cousin told me that she's very connected in Israel to Hasbara. I don't know how to say Hasbara.
Yeah.
And she said that she has all the videos. Would you like them? And I said no, because you told us, or and others, that would be Hamas victory if I see it. And everyone says that, she said herself, it's a heart attack to see it.
No, don't watch it. Do not watch it. People who've said it said they regret seeing it. The only people who should watch that are people who have questions that it happened. The only people who see it are people who need to get their head screwed on right. Anybody else, you cannot unsee what you see, and it will haunt you. It will haunt you, and the more sensitive you are, the more it will haunt you. And some people say, like, well, I should see it because those people went through it, and so the least I can do is to bear witness to it. Is like, no, absolutely not. Do not see it.
We know enough already to have half a heart attack, right? Without videos.
I was to say, you do not. I mean, I even just some of the words of things that I've heard, I'm like, I don't even want to hear the words, because, you know, if I was going to be like, la, 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 didn't happen. Okay. I think you need to see this, but I'm not trying to tune it out to not respond. Have to tune it out in order to preserve my sanity and your mental health. That's what we got going for us. And we have to preserve our minds and use your imagination, use your visualization for things that are positive, that are uplifting, that are inspiring, because we must move forward. We must move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I said no.
That was the correct answer. Correct answer. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, there was the journalist in London, not Jewish, that they showed Israel wanted him to see it. He saw it, and him and others say, we are changed for life. And it was important because they totally went on our side. Totally.
Yeah. Those are the people who need to see it. Are the people who are in denial, or the people who somehow have created some sort of bizarre moral equivalence. Those people need to see it. But anybody who is a regular, normal person does not need to see it. Does not need to see it. It's so horrible. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, guys. And Liz, Mazel Tov on becoming a grandma.
Thank you. I have my new little granddaughter right here. I'll show you.
You do. Let's see the new.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, look at her. Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
And she listened to being a Jewish woman as her first Torah portion.
Wow, I cannot.
Isn't that amazing?
I cannot
Remind me of her name, Liz.
Juliana Blake.
Oh, so pretty.
Beautiful.
I don't
What's her
see
Hebrew name?
Who's the baby?
Her Hebrew name, Eliana Freda. Is that it, Ellie? Eliana Freda.
Beautiful. Oh,
I cannot see. I don't know if I can see the baby. I can see.
Here.
This is 1 second.
Ah,
A little more,
cute.
a little higher, and to the right.
Yeah, she's 7 pounds 13 ounces.
Looks like she has kind of reddish hair.
Yeah, she has red hair. My kids had red hair, and my daughter's sons had red hair, and she has red hair too. So here we have.
That's wonderful.
That's so cool.
Very
We
exciting.
should have lots of brachas from her, and she should grow up and she should be blessed, and she should become like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah.
This is my daughter, Allie.
Hello.
Thank you. And also note, Ellen, this is her 8th day of life.
Wow, right. Beautiful. That's the time of transcendence.
I think so. I mean, that's kind of makes me kind of cry almost, but it's a beautiful. She listened to your whole Torah class and didn't cry.
Oh, I take that as a win.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a good Shabbos, and best to all of your family.
Your whole family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
That's great.